Today, I'm breaking down the PMP mindset, how PMI wants you to think when you're answering questions on the PMP exam. Have you ever come across a situation where you're answering the PMP questions? There could be at least two answers that look correct. Or sometimes you are so sure that the answer is correct because that's how you practice in real project management world, but then the answer happened to be wrong. Well, if you were in those situations, we're going to take a look at 7 PMP mindsets, and I'll bring in a practice question for each of the mindsets, and we'll take a look at the answers and find out why the answer is correct or incorrect. All right, let's take a look at mindset number 1. Servant leadership over command and control. In a traditional sense, it used to be being a good leader meant to have a command and being able to control the situations. But in recent years, having a servant leadership ability is one of the most effective ways to manage the projects and being a good leader. That's why a servant leader who empowers the team, removes the blockers, and facilitates the collaboration between the teams, not make them compete. That is the mindset the PMI is looking for. All right, let's take a look at this example question. A cross-functional project team is behind schedule due to frequent misunderstandings between two senior team leaders. Tension is increasing, and one team member has requested that you escalate the issue to the functional manager immediately. As the project manager, what should you do first? The answers are A. Escalate the issue to the functional manager to ensure accountability. Well, although that is a good idea, let's table that answer. Replace one of the team members to prevent further delays. Well, that seemed like a bit of too much of a jump. C. Facilitate a discussion between the team members to understand concerns and align on expectations. That sounds really good. D. Update the issue log and revise the schedule to reflect the delays. So, when you're answering this question, I want you to focus on the word first. Because when you see some of the answers, updating issue log and revising the schedule is definitely some of the things you can do as a project manager. But since the question was, what should you do first? I think the right answer is C, facilitating a discussion between the team members to understand their concerns and make sure that they align on those expectations because there are some misunderstandings going. And on the first mindset that we just talked about, right? Making sure to empower the team and facilitate collaboration. So, with that, let's take a look at the answer. All right, the correct answer was C. So, basically, as a project manager, and the mindset you would have is to not escalate the situation immediately, but instead coach, collaborate, and support first. And if that doesn't work out, there's always next steps. But for this question, the correct answer is C. Mindset number 2, people first, always. Before tools, schedules, or any processes, make sure that you address conflict, clarify the expectation, and build a trust. We may have the best tools and methods and schedules in place, but we have to remember that project is run by people, not documents. That's why this mindset is very important. All right, let's take a look at this question. A key stakeholder emails you demanding an immediate schedule update after hearing some rumors of a potential delay. The team confirms that the delay is possible, but not yet validated. What should the project manager do? A. Update the schedule immediately to reflect the possible delay. Well, there is no validation yet, so updating the schedule right away seems a little risky. B. Respond with the current schedule and wait until the delay is confirmed. Well, that sounds like a really good answer, but let's look at the next one. C. Escalate the concern to the sponsor to manage stakeholder expectations. Escalating, when you see in a word escalate right away, that's usually really not a good idea. Escalation is something that comes once you tried, you facilitated, worked with your team. So C seemed like a little risky. D, meet with the team to validate the impact, then communicate directly with the stakeholder. I would want to go with answer D because, well, first of all, you're meeting with your team, right? And validating means you're really finding the answer versus just hearing a rumor and thinking there's a potential delay and using that information to change a schedule. That doesn't seem like a good idea. And also communicating directly with stakeholder, that is a really good way of managing this conflict. So let's take a look at the answer. Oh, correct D. Okay. So basically, jumping right into the schedule instead of making sure that aligning with the team, PMI wants to make sure that you have conversations with your team before documenting anything. All right, so that's good. Let's move on to mindset number three, proactive, not reactive. Okay, so project managers who anticipate risks, act early, prevent fires instead of reacting to them. In any profession, being proactive and really making sure that you're seeing the problems ahead of time or potential risks and issues ahead of time, not reacting last minute when it's already happening. That's usually not a good practice. During risk planning, the team identifies a moderate risk that could impact vendor delivery timeline. No issues have occurred yet. What should the project manager do? Well, so from the sound of it, there is a risk, but the issue hasn't happened yet. So, as you know, risk is something that yet happened, but if something happens, that's considered an issue, right? All right, answers are A, document the risk and take action only if it materializes. Okay, so that's what we're talking about, right? Document the risk, and if it's materialized, that's issue. So basically, what's saying is that just document it and don't worry about it until it really happens. B, add contingency time to the schedule without notifying stakeholders. Well, that doesn't sound good. Without notifying stakeholders is usually never is a good idea. C, develop a response plan and monitor early warning indicators. Okay, that's that's a good idea. Well, having a response plan and also monitoring is usually a good idea. D, transfer the risk to the vendor through contract penalties. Okay, transferring the risk is in this scenario is not a good idea. So I think that C is a good idea because having a response plan in place and also making sure to keeping a close eye, um, keeping a close eyes to those early warning indicators, which means ready to take actions. And let's see. Correct answer is C. All right. So what's really is asking you here, don't be a reactive project manager. Don't be the project manager who fights the fires. Wait until something happens. The project managers remove matches before the fire starts. So that's what we really want you to focus on is when you answer the questions here, think of being a proactive project manager, not the reactive one. All right. Mindset number four, value delivery over following the plan. Well, following the plan is not a bad idea because that's where plan is in place. But plans are tools. That's not everything. As a project manager, adapting the plan when needed. Of course, plans are going to change, schedules are going to follow through. So having those adaptability skills and also protecting business values, always a good idea. Let's take a look at a question. Midway through a predictive project, market conditions change and a feature scheduled for later phases becomes critical to business value. Delivering it now will require revising the approved plan. What should the project manager do? What is asking is that there's always already so what's the question is asking is that there's already a plan in place. And if you want to change something, it's going to become critical to business value. So what it's asking you is there's already a plan in place. However, there is a market condition change and it's a critical change needed in the schedule. So if you do make the change now, it's going to be the whole revising the approved plan needs to happen. All right, answer. A, submit a change request and assess impact and value, cost, and schedule. That sounds really good. Well, submitting a change request is usually the first step in the process, right? And along with assessing the impact of how is it going to be valuable, how much it's going to cost, and how much it's going to change the schedule. B, follow the original plan to avoid scope creep. Well, it doesn't really go with the mindset that we're trying to go for here, right? All right, deliver the feature immediately to meet market demand. Well, immediately is a little bit of a risky word because yes, the change needs to happen, but immediately is not a good idea because first you need to submit a change, talk to your team, your stakeholders, project sponsors. There has to be a lot more need to happen first before just making the change. D, ask the sponsor to decide without providing analysis. Well, that's another risky thing. You can't just go ask your sponsor to make changes or make a decision without providing any analysis because that's why, as a project manager, we're here, right? So I would say go with A. I'm pretty confident in that. Yes. So sticking to the baseline, no matter what, is not a good idea. You want to adjust. You want to maximize the value. You want to do the research. You assess the situation and the impact first. All right. Mindset number 5, change is normal. It's not a threat. So, a PMI wants you to evaluate the changes objectively, follow a change process, and communicate the impact clearly with your team, your stakeholders, because that's what we want to see, right? Change is normal. It's not a bad thing, but it needs to be followed a specific certain process to make a change. All right, the question here. A stakeholder submits a change request that adds scope but may increase long term customer satisfaction. The team is resistant due to workload concerns. What should the project manager do? Well, that's a tricky situation. A. Reject the change to protect the team from overwork. I mean, we definitely don't want our team to overwork without any plan in place or any mitigation in place. But rejecting the change right away, that doesn't sound good. B. Approve the change to satisfy the stakeholder. Well, we do want to satisfy our stakeholders, but approving the change without any other actions in place, probably not a good idea. C. Evaluate the change's impact and facilitate a decision with stakeholders. Well, I like the word evaluate. I like the fact that evaluating the change and its impact, and then also communicating that with the stakeholder. C is a really good answer. D, delay the change until after project completion. Well, that would not be a good idea because why would we need to wait until the project is completed? I would go with C because it is definitely there's communication, there's evaluation of the impact. Correct. So what we're looking for here is you as a project manager cannot just immediately reject the change because we cannot just reject those changes immediately. There has to be some discussions and conversations with our stakeholders, with our team to come to a conclusion collaboratively. And what they're looking for is assessing impact, involving the stakeholders, and deciding rationally and as a team. Mindset number 6, process awareness without rigidity. So basically, what they're asking you is know when a process applies. Not just knowing the process is not going to be enough. Knowing the ITTO, right? The input, the tools and techniques and outputs from our learning. That's great to know all those tools and the processes, but knowing when to apply and understanding why they're being applied and also using it in an appropriate way, that's what they're looking for. All right, let's take a look at the question. A project is experiencing recurring quality issues. The team suggests adding additional approval steps, but this may slow delivery. What should the project manager do? A. Implement the additional steps immediately. Well, I know there's a sense of urgency, but implementing the steps immediately without discussing with your team or stakeholders doesn't sound like a good idea. B, reject the idea to avoid bureaucracy. Well, rejecting it right away without analyzing, again, communicating, never a good idea. C, analyze root causes and adjust processes as appropriate. Well, that sounds really good. Let's table that. D, escalate the issues to senior management. Well, if the issue is persisting and you have taken all the steps that you could, taken all the actions, and you may escalate the issue at some point, right? You may there's a process in place that you do want to escalate the issues to senior management, but not before you analyzing it, not before you trying to find the solutions or talking to your team. So with that, I think C is a good answer. Let's see. All right. Okay. Well, so what they're looking for here is again, process awareness is a good idea, but not just quoting them or just blindly following those processes. It's not a good idea. You want to apply logic. You want to see why those processes are important and why is it important and why is it in place. So that is mindset number 6. Mindset number 7, ethics, transparency, and professional responsibility. It is a good idea as a good project manager, you being honest, transparent, and you show respect to your stakeholders in your team, have a good working relationship, and you make ethical decision making. That's what PMI is looking for. And that is an honest indication of a good project manager in the first place. All right, question. A sponsor asks you to exclude known risks from a report to avoid alarming senior leadership. What should you do? A, remove the risks to maintain sponsor support. Well, I definitely wouldn't want to do that because just removing the risks without communicating with anybody or without trying to find a resolution, just so you avoid that discomfort or that conflict, that's not a good idea. B, transparently report the risks and discuss mitigation strategies. Even though it's uncomfortable, like I said, we're ethical project managers and we want to do the right thing. So B sounds like a really good answer. C, reward the risks to minimize concern. Well, rewarding the risk is not going to help you. It's only going to kick the can down the road. So C wouldn't be a good idea. D, delay reporting until risks materialize. In our earlier conversation, we talked about we do not want to wait until the risk becomes an issue and then we figure it out and then we try to turn that fire off. That's definitely not something we want to do. So, answer B seemed like a really good answer. Let's take a look. Okay, it's correct. So, what they're looking for here is you don't want to avoid a conversation because it's uncomfortable, or you don't want to protect those authority over a value. And you definitely do not want to hide any information because at the end of the day, as a project manager, it's your job to have those uncomfortable conversations and making the right decisions and definitely bringing more information and communicate well with your team. These are the 7 mindsets help you answer your PMP question successfully. And not only acing your PMP, these mindsets are also very helpful to be a good project manager to begin with. So think of these mindsets not only in the PMP situation, but in your project management career.